We will! I will! I'm down. We're gonna let her go. I will murder you!
When a police sergeant is violently assaulted inside a casino, CCTV footage captures the entire confrontation, revealing how an ordinary night out spiraled so dangerously out of control.
A casino floor is supposed to be a place of calculated risk, where the house always has the edge. But on March 10, 2024, at Batavia Downs in New York, a bet was placed that nobody at the table could have anticipated.
The following footage has never been seen before. On March 10, 2024, reports of a fight sent police rushing to Batavia Downs Casino in New York. Radio traffic indicates that a sheriff's sergeant is being assaulted by a highly combative couple.
Where's he at?
The wager wasn't on a hand of cards or a spin of the wheel. The wager was on whether Sergeant Thomas Sanfratello would walk out of the building alive. The house lost.
5-6, start with your mask. Officer down, officer down.
Take his vest off, take his vest off. CPR, CPR.
Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Shadow Jury Archives. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. The night began with the small thrill of a $200 slot machine win, a cheap round of drinks, and the mundane boredom of a group of friends who decided they felt lucky.
We're at my house, chilling. I don't go out like that ever. They came over, they're like, oh, what's up? I'm like, hanging out, at the house. So they're like, oh, can we hang out? I'm like, sure. I'm like, I'll fill him up.
Michael Elmore, 33, and Lindsay Wilcox, 39, were not looking for a fight. They were looking for a bar stool. But within hours, Elmore would be on the floor, with a sergeant's life draining away in his grip. And the only thing anyone would be asking is how a perfectly ordinary night out becomes a death sentence for someone who never chose to be there. That is the question that hangs over this entire case. And the answer is a slow-motion collision of ego, alcohol, and a complete failure to understand the words, "You need to leave." The confrontation started with a disagreement over service. From the perspective of the couple and their friend Cody, the bartender was ignoring them, serving other patrons while they waited. But when the bartender finally engaged, he didn't see a group of customers with a legitimate complaint. He saw a man pointing, accusing, and refusing to accept that a bartender has the right to refuse service to anyone who is disrespectful.
I went over there, and he was saying, you're serving this person, this person, this person, you're not serving us. And, I said, I don't need to serve you. It is not my job to serve somebody who's disrespectful. I don't need to do that. And it just, escalated. And
so he was like, you, I can't get a drink like what I do to you. You're acting crazy. Your job is to serve me.
The bartender told Elmore to sit down to leave, and that he would not be served. It was a boundary, clear and firm. It was also completely ignored. Elmore and Wilcox did not leave the bar area. Instead, they escalated. They swore, they yelled, they pounded on the counter. Security was called
for backup.
I went to call security because they're swearing, they're yelling, they're slamming on the bar, whatever. Security came over, and then they were like, we're not leaving. And they were like, well, if you're not leaving, you're going to be arrested.
A security officer soon arrived to escort the couple out of the...
And then, a moment that would change everything, Sergeant Thomas Sanfratello arrived. He was working a special assignment detail that night. It was supposed to be a quiet shift. He was a 54-year-old veteran, a man who had handled thousands of confrontations. But he had never handled this couple. The sergeant's arrival should have been the end of the disruption. He had the badge, the authority, and the backup. But from the very first moment he stepped into the frame, he was met with resistance. When he tried to escort the pair toward the exit, Lindsay appeared to become increasingly frustrated. She was arrested for something, a detail that remains unclear in the chaos. And that single action was the spark.
As I've got him going up, something happens with Lindsay behind us that we don't hear. He's like, oh, my. I hear the sheriff say, you're under arrest. Puts her down. When he put her down, that's when Buddy started going crazy.
Michael Elmore heard his girlfriend was being taken into custody, and he lost control. What happened next is documented in surveillance footage, witness accounts, and the frantic, breathless radio calls of officers who would soon be fighting for their colleague's life. Elmore stormed out of the casino, giving security the immediate, chilling thought that he might be going to retrieve a gun.
Security officer recalled the events in vivid detail.
her boyfriend starts going ballistic.
Yeah.
Get the off my girlfriend, da-da-da-da-da. So I grabbed him. I said, yo, you gotta go.
Yeah.
You leave. Man, his friend is trying to help me. Like, yo, get out, bro. It's good. They got her. She's under arrest. That's what they're trying to tell you. You can't do nothing.
Yeah.
So he gets mad and storms out.
Okay.
So when he do that,
He didn't get a gun. Instead, he came rushing back in, swinging metal chains that he had torn from around his own neck. Those chains would become the instrument of the assault, but they were not the weapon that killed Sergeant Sanfratello. The confrontation exploded into a physical brawl. Elmore Bull rushed the security team, lunged through the air, and was caught mid-struggle. Sergeant Sanfratello drew his taser, but the probes missed, one lodging in a security guard's arm. And then Elmore and the sergeant were on the ground. Elmore struck the sergeant repeatedly in the face with the chains. Then he wrapped his arms around the sergeant's neck, a chokehold, and he drove him to the floor. We hear a security guard in the background, a voice in the chaos, calling out, "Check on him. Check on him. Something happened to him." It is a voice that knows something is wrong before the rest of the world does. Because after the struggle, after Elmore was finally pinned down by multiple officers, security guards, and even his own friend, the sergeant stood up. He took a moment to catch his breath. He was still standing. He was still alive. But it was a lie. In a matter of seconds, Sergeant Sanfratello collapsed. He stopped breathing. He went limp. There was no pulse. A Lucas device, a machine designed to perform uninterrupted CPR, was deployed. Paramedics worked for over 45 minutes. His son arrived and watched as the life was forced into his father's chest by a machine. But no amount of life-saving intervention could bring him back. The cause of death: cardiac arrest from the assault. The sergeant had a history of heart disease, a fact that would later become a subject of debate. But the medical examiner, the court, and the law all agreed on one thing: his heart stopped because of the physical trauma he sustained during the attack. 2 months after the incident, police at the station delivered the news to Elmore. The deputy that was there, "I don't know if anybody told you this yet or not, but he died." The response from Elmore was immediate and raw. "No, no, 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 no. No way, bro. Oh my God, my life is over." And that statement, "my life is over," is where the focus shifted. Not to the dead sergeant. Not to the family who would never see their father again. Not to the son who had to witness his father's final moments. The focus shifted to Elmore and his suddenly ruined future. And this is where the story becomes more than just a bar fight gone wrong. This is where it becomes a case study in misplaced priorities. Elmore was charged with aggravated manslaughter. He pleaded guilty, sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 5 years of post-release supervision. Lindsay Wilcox pleaded guilty to assault, receiving 5 years of probation and a 6-month jail sentence. But the legal conclusion doesn't answer the question that lingers. The question isn't whether Elmore deserved the sentence. He did. The question is why. Why would a man faced with the authority of law enforcement choose to double down with physical violence? Why would a man swing chains and apply a chokehold over an argument about bar service? And why, at the moment he was told he had killed someone, was his first thought, "My life is over"? This is the moral refrain of this entire story, and it comes back 3 times. He was only thinking of himself. He was only thinking of himself when he stormed back into that casino. He was only thinking of himself when he wrapped those chains around his hand and struck a sergeant in the face. And he was only thinking of himself when he realized that a man, a father, a veteran officer, was dead because of him. The system held Elmore accountable. He is now in prison. But the accountability that matters, the kind that would make someone pause before losing control over something as trivial as a bar tab, is absent. He didn't commit this crime because he was born a monster. He committed it because he refused to recognize the gravity of the situation. He couldn't see the line that separated an argument from a felony. He crossed it, and he didn't know he had crossed it until it was too late. Sergeant Thomas Sanfratello was a husband, a father, a 54-year-old man who had served his community for decades. He had a heart condition, a vulnerability that most people on a casino floor would never know about, and he was simply doing his job. He asked a couple to leave. He tried to arrest a woman who was resisting, and he paid for it with his life. The public record of this case is available through the Genesee County Court documents and the New York State Department of Corrections. You can read the sentencing memorandums. You can see the timeline. You can verify every detail. But here is the direct question for you, the viewer, and I want you to answer in the comments. If you were in that casino bar that night and you saw Elmore walk back in swinging those chains, what would you have done? Would you have intervened? Would you have backed away? Or would you have tried to talk him down? The answer says more about you than you might think. This is Shadow Jury Archives. We follow the evidence. We ask the questions that the headlines don't cover. And we remind you that the most dangerous gamble in any casino isn't on the table. It's believing that consequences don't apply to you. If this case showed you something you hadn't considered before, like and share this video. Subscribe to Shadow Jury Archives and turn on notifications. Because the next case we uncover might be even closer to your own front door than you think. And we'll be here to walk you through it, frame by frame,